Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining today's session. This is going to be a Control-M SaaS demo. And before we get started, just a brief introduction. My name is Yavar Kitabi. I am a workload automation specialist here at VPMA, and I specialize in Control-M and all of its different features, functionalities, utilities, and plugins. So happy to be here and looking forward to going through this demo presentation with you all. As we're going through this presentation, if you have any questions, please raise your hand and we'll try to answer your questions either on the spot or we can use the last 10 minutes or so as sort of a Q&A to go over any particular questions or topics in more detail. As you may already know, Control-M SaaS is a cloud-based workflow orchestration platform that simplifies, automates, and manages complex data pipelines and application workflows across hybrid, multi-cloud, and even mainframe environments. With Control-M, organizations can bring all of their operational processes, such as batch jobs, file transfers, database workflows, other application integrations, and more into a single unified view. The platform also provides role-based access control, ensuring end users only see and manage what's relevant to their responsibilities. And we'll go over user segregation a little bit more in detail as we go through this demo. In order to access your Control-M SaaS environment, you should have received an email with your environment details. So from that email, you can copy the link to your environment, paste it in your browser, and it should take you to a login page like this. Control-M SaaS supports a variety of authentication methods. User accounts can be created and managed locally within the Control-M application itself, or integrated with enterprise identity providers using SAML 2.0. This includes support for platforms like Okta, Azure AD, and other major identity providers, allowing your organization to align Control-M access with your existing security and authentication standards. So once you're on this login page, if your user account was created locally, you should have also received a username and temporary password. You can enter your username here as well as your temporary password. After your first login, you will be prompted to set a permanent password. And once that permanent password is set, it should log you in directly into your Control-M SaaS environment. So I'm going to go ahead and log in here. And since it's not my first time, it's not going to ask me to set a permanent password, but that may be the first thing that you will see if it's your first time logging in. I'll give it a second to load. After you log into your environment for the first time, you'll get this welcome pop-up that gives you all of the steps you need to follow in order to have your jobs and workflows up and running and automatically scheduled in Control-M SaaS. As you can see, we have 4 easy to follow steps here, starting with the agent setup. And with the agent setup, you'll be installing a Control-M SaaS agent on one of your machines. This will allow communications between that particular host and your Control-M SaaS environment. And after the agent installation is complete, the agent allows you to run any operating system command inside the host that the agent is installed on. The communication is going to be a one-way communication between the agent and Control-M SaaS. So with that, we want to make sure the appropriate ports are open and the correct firewall rules are set. Once you have your tenant information, you can reach out to BMC support for detailed information on the hosts that need to be whitelisted and the required ports that need to be open in order to allow communication between your Control-M SaaS agent and your Control-M SaaS environment. Now, to actually install a Control-M SaaS agent, we can just click on the agent setup here. This will take us to our environment's configuration manager. From here, we can click on agents. This will take us to our agents list where we can see all of the different Control-M SaaS agents that are installed on our different hosts that are pointing to our demo Control-M SaaS environment. We can see the agent names, their current communication status, whether they're available, unavailable, or disabled. We can see their status message, the Control-M server, the tag, the agent's host account, and even if the agent belongs to a particular host group or not. Now, host groups in Control-M SaaS are just a cluster of agents that act as another layer of high availability. So when these jobs run under these particular host groups, in case the particular agent inside them are down or unavailable for whatever reason, let's say patching or maintenance, then the job will just try to run on the next available agent within that host group. And of course, next to host groups, we also have the agent's current version and if newer versions are available in order to upgrade. In order to add new agents to our environment, we can click on this Add Agent dropdown, and from here we can click on Install Agent. This will give us this right-hand panel pop-up, and from here we can see all of the different operating systems that we can install Control-M agents on. At the top of the list, we have AIX, Alma Linux, Amazon Linux, Debian, IBM, Oracle Linux, Red Hat, SUSE, Ubuntu, Windows, and Docker Kubernetes. When we click on any of these different operating systems, on the right-hand side, we get the full agent installation steps. As a matter of fact, we have a few different ways that we can install Control-M SaaS agents. So one, we have the standard installation steps, as we can see here, which requires us to log into the target host with administrative privileges and download the installation files. And then we need to have our agent token. This is what links our agent installation to our Control-M SaaS environment. So you can copy your agent token here. We'll need it for the actual installation of the Control-M SaaS agent. And if you don't have a token available, you can use this generate token button to generate a new token. Going a little bit further down, we can see we also have an automated installation option. This will allow us to automatically install the Control-M SaaS agent on our target host, but a prerequisite to this, we need to make sure we have the automation API client installed first. That is a prerequisite to running the automated install command. Now let's go over the standard installation steps. I've already downloaded the installation file and have ran it as administrator. Once you do, you'll get a pop-up like this. It'll ask you for an instance name. You can click on next. Then you have your installation path, your agent name, as we saw in our agents list on this left-hand side. And here we enter our agent token name that we use to connect our agent to our Control-M SaaS environment. So I can paste it here. And after I click next, the agent installation will start. Now that our Control-M agents are installed and populated on our agents list in our configurations page, we can run operating system level commands directly on the hosts where the agents reside using Control-M jobs. These agents can also run jobs on other applications using plugins, and Control-M has a wide range of plugins you can use, which allows you to orchestrate workloads across a broad range of applications and technologies. So let's take a look at some of the plugins that are available. To do so, we want to go back to the home page of our configurations tab. And from here within the agents box, you'll notice there is a plugins button. Once you click on it, it'll take you to the plugins page. Here we can see all of the different plugins that are installed on top of the different agents that we have in our Control-M SaaS demo environment. We can see the plugin type, the plugin to agent communication status, whether unavailable or available. We have the name of the agent that the plugin is installed on, and the version of the installed plugin. In order to install plugins, we want to click on the Install Plugin button, and it'll give you this right-hand panel pop-up similar to what we saw for the agent installations. Here we can see all of the different plugins that are available for us out of the box. Control-M SaaS includes over 100 pre-built plugins and integrations that are available for us to use. And BMC continuously reinvests in R&D and integrations development, regularly delivering new and enhanced integrations to support modern, enterprise, and emerging technologies. This allows your organization to automate and manage workflows across your entire technology stack without necessarily relying on custom scripting. So as you can see here, we have a wide range of plugins that are available for us to use. We have a plugin for Jira, AWS. Going a little further down, we can see we have Azure DevOps, Databricks, Data Factory, Boomi Atmosphere, our databases, which we'll use as an example a little bit later, Databricks, Datadog, and almost any application that you can think of, we more than likely have an integration or a plugin for it. Now, in a rare case where native integration is not yet available directly from BMC, Control-M provides the application integrator, which enables teams to build custom plugins and integrations using APIs. And that can be accessed in the Control-M Applications tab here. Here we can see the application integrator itself. So between the application integrator and all of the different plugins that are available, BMC ensures extensibility and flexibility, allowing Control-M to integrate with virtually any application or service. For today's demonstration, we're primarily going to focus on the databases, managed file transfer, and web services plugin. So in our plugins list, we can go down until we find the databases plugin, or we can also use the search here. After we found the plugin that we're trying to install, we can simply click on it. And on this right-hand side, again, similar to the agent installation steps, we have both the standard installation and automated installation steps available. So you can select whichever installation method you prefer. Once you successfully install your plugins, you can now move on to creating your centralized connection profiles. To do so, you can click on this orange dropdown, and from here we can click on Centralized Connection Profiles. Centralized Connection Profiles define how Control-M securely connects to external systems and applications such as databases, cloud services, file transfer endpoints, and even APIs. These connection profiles store details like host names, file transfer endpoints, file transfer types such as FTP, FTPS, SFTP, S3 buckets, ports, credentials, tokens, authentication methods. Instead of hard coding these sensitive connection details inside every job, with centralized connection profiles, we define them once and reuse them across multiple jobs in our environment. This makes the environment more secure, easier to manage, and much easier to change. So if something changes like a password rotation or a endpoint update, you update the connection profile once and every job using it automatically inherits that change. So for example, we just installed the Control-M for Databases plugin on one of our agents. Now we need to define connection profiles to connect to our database through the plugin that we've just installed. So to do so, we can click on this Add Connection Profile button, and from here we can select the plugin that we want to create the connection profile for. So in this case, I'll select Databases, and we get this right-hand panel pop up. Now I already have a database's centralized connection profile, so we're just going to use that as our example. When creating your centralized connection profiles, there are three main tabs that can be filled out. In the General tab, we have our connection profile name and description, and right below it, we need to select our database type. So here I've set Postgres as that is the type of database that I am trying to connect to, but you can see all of the different options that are available. We have Oracle, MS SQL, DB2, Sybase, Postgres, SAP ASC, or any database that supports JDBC. Below that, we can select our database version depending on our database type. And next, we have our database connection parameters. Here we need to put in our host name, the port number, database name, and our database credentials. Again, this depends on the database type that you are trying to connect to. Some of these options may be a little bit different if you, for example, select the MS SQL database type. And we also have the advanced connection configurations. Here you can modify the advanced configurations of the connection profile, such as maximum concurrent connections, number of connection retries, connection retry timeout, and the connection idle time duration. Once you've filled all of your connection profile details in both the general and the database connection parameters tab, you can test your connection profile against the host where you have your databases plugin installed. So here I'll run a quick test, and if there are any issues connecting to the database through your agent, then it'll let you know here, and if not, it'll just say the connection to the selected agent validated successfully. Now that we've installed our Control-M SaaS agents alongside the necessary plugins and created our connection profiles for the plugins that we've installed, we can now navigate over to the planning domain. The planning domain is where we create new jobs and modify existing jobs in our environment. So in order to get to the planning domain, we want to go back into the main Control-M application, and that can be done using the little tiles icon on this top right hand side. From here, we can click on Control-M. Should open up another tab for us. Once you're back into the main Control-M application page, you want to make sure you're in the planning domain. And from here, you'll see the option to create a new workspace. Workspaces in Control-M SaaS are essentially a blank canvas, and inside them we can either create new jobs and workflows, or we can use workspaces to modify existing jobs and workflows in our environment. There are a few ways we can create a new workspace. On this top left hand side, we have this orange dropdown. We can use the Add New Workspace button there, or we can use this New Workspace button in the middle of the screen, and that should give us a pop-up on this right hand side. Before we can get into our new workspace, we need to define our workspace definitions. As you can see on this right hand side, it's asking me for a workspace name, and right below it a description, change ID, and email notification. These three are optional, and right below it we have our site standards. Site standards are an out-of-the-box feature that come with Control-M SaaS. It allows your organization to define rules and standards that must be followed by end users as they're creating their jobs and workflows. So let's say your organization decides that all jobs in Control-M SaaS must begin with a particular set of prefixes or suffixes, or maybe they should have a character limit, or they should be all caps or lowercase. All of those can be defined within your site standard rules. I'm going to use my Control-M demo site standard for demonstration purposes. Once you select your site standard, you can click on Create, and this is going to take you to your new blank workspace. Now, once you're in a blank workspace, you'll notice it comes with an empty folder inside it. Folders in Control-M SaaS are essentially containers for our jobs and workflows. You can create multiple folders and add your jobs and workflows to them. So let's get started with our empty folder. With the folder selected on this right-hand properties panel, we can rename our folder. And here you'll notice there is a red exclamation mark on all of the required fields. And these are either required fields by default by Control-M, or they can be enforced by your set site standards. So here for the folder name, I'm going to go ahead and enter a name, and we'll call this demo folder. And as you can see, the exclamation mark went away. We can see sub applications are also enforced within our site standard rules. We have to enter a sub application for our folder as well. So here I'm just going to put in demo. Now, applications and sub applications, they're just logical terms that we can set on our jobs and folders in order to group them in the monitoring domain or in the active environment. So we can define applications and sub applications for all of the different jobs and smart folders that we create in our Control-M SaaS environment. Now that our demo folder is ready, we can go ahead and add some jobs to it. We can either right click on our folder and use this add jobs to locate the job type that we want to add inside the folder, or we can use this plus jobs icon on this top left hand side here. This will also give you a job palette drop down. So I'm going to go ahead and add a file transfer job to my folder. Let's go back to the job palette. We'll also add an OS job. We'll add a databases, and you can always use the search here as well. We'll add a database job. And finally, a web services job. Now we have 4 jobs added to our folder, but they don't necessarily have any general definitions or any scheduling definitions. So if these jobs were to run right now, they would run simultaneously all together in no particular order or flow. And 2, they most likely would not work at all because we haven't defined the general definitions of the jobs. So let's fix that starting with the file transfer job. When we click on our jobs within our workspace, you'll notice on this right-hand properties panel, we have 4 main tabs that are the same with all of the different job types in Control-M SaaS. We have the General tab, the Scheduling tab, Prerequisites, and Actions. Now, the Generals tab is the only tab that'll look different depending on which job type you are using. So, for example, we can see here with the Manage File Transfer job type, the General tab is a bit different than what we see in the database job type, of course. And that's because the General tab is responsible for what the job actually does. So first, we need to give our job a proper name. Here, we'll call it Demo File Transfer. You can give it a description if needed. We also have the ability to run all of our jobs in our environment in dummy mode. And the benefit to this is you can create a whole flow, but you may not necessarily be able to run it live yet. You can always set your jobs in your environment to run as dummy mode just so they actually come into the active environment and run according to the schedule, but not necessarily actually execute what the job is supposed to do. So we can see here there's a little question mark icon. You can hover over it. It'll give you a brief description of what the run as dummy feature actually does. It's basically a fake execution of the job. Below we have the where, so we can see exactly where this particular job runs. We have the host/host group. Now this is a file transfer job, so it'll be initiating a file transfer from whichever host/host group that we select. So you want to go ahead and update this to the appropriate host group. And right below the where, we need to define the what. We need to define exactly what this particular job is supposed to do when it runs. Now, this is a file transfer job, which uses the Manage File Transfer plugin. And the Manage File Transfer plugin requires connection profile. So we need to define the endpoints from which we're picking up a file and where we're dropping the file to. So to the right of the connection profiles, you can click on the 3 dots to select the connection profiles that you've built. So for me here, I can select my YKN MSS SQL. That is going to be my source. And on this right-hand side, I'll select my YKN CTM app server as my destination. You can click on select. And now both of your connection profiles are set. Next, after the connection profile selection, we can enter the path from which we're picking up our file and specify the file that needs to get picked up. So I'll be picking up my test file from my SFTP in directory. Now we need to define the destination path that we'll drop this file into. Now, if you know your source and destination paths and file names, you can type them out like I did. And if not, you can click on Advanced and go into the Browse. And you can use the Browse here to navigate the different folders and directories and select them from here. You also have access to a bunch of additional advanced file transfer functionalities and features that are available with the Manage File Transfer job type. We have an additional General tab with different source actions, destination actions, source patterns. We have different commands that we can take with FTP pre-commands, and a couple of other additional options and features that are available as well. And now my file transfer job is set to pick up a test file from my SFTP folder and drop it into a archive directory. Next, let's navigate to the scheduling definitions of this job. So going into the scheduling tab here, we can see by default this job is set to an everyday schedule. You can click on this drop down and we can see we have a couple of different options that are available. Every day by default, the job is scheduled 7 days of the week. We have none, which means the job will be manual order, ad hoc, and must be brought into the plan manually in order for it to run. We have specific dates. If the job is only needed to run on specific dates, we can use the specific date options to select those dates. We have use parent schedule. So with Control-M SaaS and smart folders, we have the ability to set scheduling criteria at a folder level and let the jobs inside those folders just inherit them instead of setting scheduling criteria on each individual job. You can also inherit scheduling definitions from the job's parent smart folder. And finally, we have the advanced option if you want to set more advanced scheduling criteria on your jobs. Let's say you want to schedule it for the first Monday of the month, the last Friday, or anything more complex in between. You can always use the advanced scheduling tab to do so. You can add calendars, you can create or conditions between the different types of scheduling criterias that you set. You can set confirmation calendars, exclusions. There's almost no limit to what you can do with the advanced calendar option. So I'm going to go ahead and set this back to every day, and we can look at the time setting. Now with the time settings, we can define a from and to time. So we can say this job can only run after, let's say, 10 a.m. And if needed, you can specify a to time as well. So let's say the job should only run between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. or 5 p.m. or during working hours, for example. All of that can be configured with the time settings here. Right below that, we have our cyclic options, which controls the cadence of the job while it's in the active environment. So if a particular job should run multiple times in a day, you don't necessarily need to create multiple instances of the same job or to bring in multiple instances of the same job into the active environment. You can just set your job to cyclic, define the rerun interval, whether you want it to rerun at a normal every 5, 10, 15-minute interval, or if you want to use a interval sequence where the first rerun is after 5 minutes, the second rerun is after 15, and the third one is after 45. You do have that option available as well. And finally, we have a specific times cyclic rerun option, which allows you to let your jobs run at multiple specific times of the day. So let's say first rerun should be at 10 11:45. The second rerun should be at 11:22, and the third rerun should be at 4:50 p.m. You can use the specific time cyclic settings to accomplish a scenario like that. Next, we have the prerequisites tab. The prerequisites tab shows you all of your prerequisites on your jobs. You can also set lock resources and resource pools. These are logical resources that we can create and set on our jobs and smart folders to either prevent the execution of multiple jobs at the same time or to limit the total number of jobs that run in our environment. So let's say we have two jobs that take a lot of resources on a particular agent, and these two jobs should in no way run at the same time. We can use lock resources to facilitate a scenario like that, making sure that both of these jobs at no point run simultaneously. And similarly, if we want to cap the number of jobs running on, let's say, a particular agent, or let's say we want to limit the total number of file transfers that happen at the same time, we can use resource pools to cap the number of jobs that can run at the same time. Finally, one of the most important tabs, we have the Actions tab. Here we can see the post-processing of our job. So any outgoing conditions and successors that are supposed to be triggered after the completion of our selected job would be shown here. We can also set our notifications. We have our notifications before job completion, notifications after job completions, and we can even capture from job output and take specific actions. Most important one here, we have the if actions, which allows you to take particular actions in the environment based on particular results of your jobs. So if I click on this plus icon here, I can see I'm able to choose from a wide range of different ifs. So if job ended not okay, if job just ended with whatever status, if the job ended with a particular completion status, and we see this used a lot by other organizations. So let's say with your file transfer job, we know that if a file is not found, it fails with a status code 7. So a lot of times this isn't necessarily considered a real failure. So we can say if OS completion status equals 7 to set the job to okay, or maybe rerun the job, or take whatever particular action that you find necessary for a no file found on a file transfer job. So we have a lot of flexibility here with what we can do with our if actions. So you can see we're able to set the if to if the job's number of executions, if the job's number of reruns hit a certain amount, if the output cannot be found, meaning the job cannot submit on the agent, if there is a specific statement in the output that was generated, or if there's a particular variable value. So these are all of the different ifs that we can use in our if actions. Now, if we go with if job ended not okay, we can see all of the different actions that we can set on this particular if action. So we can say first option is notify, and this is used to create email notifications for our jobs and smart folders. So when we select notify, we can define the destination. We can either generate a Control-M alerts, mail, or job log. You can enter the email address the notification should go out to when this job fails. This can be a normal email or a distribution list. We have our CC, we have our subject, of course, our urgency, and the ability to attach the job's output to the email notification that is sent out. So I'm going to go ahead and put my own email here. Put my message. Now, a good note for the message, Control-M SaaS comes with a wide range of system variables that are available for you to use within your job and notification definitions. So you don't necessarily need to hard code your job names here or folder names, for example. Some of them can be referenced by the system variables that are available by default. So now our if action notifications are set. And going back into the prerequisites tab, there's one more feature that we forgot to go over. There's also the require user confirmation. This will prevent the job from running even if the scheduling criteria is met. It'll always require a manual user confirmation in order for the job to actually run in Control-M. So we can toggle this option and see exactly how it looks when we bring this job into the active environment later. So now we have our actions set with our notifications. We have our prerequisites set with the required user confirmation in order to run. Even if the scheduling criteria is met, we have our scheduling definitions set. The job is set to run every day after 10 a.m. And our general definitions correctly define what the job is supposed to do when it runs. We have our job name, we have the particular host that this file transfer is initiated from. We have our correct connection profile selected with our source and destination set. So now we can move on to the next job that we are going to create, which is going to be our database job type. So we follow the same procedure here. As you can see, Generals tab is a little bit different than what we saw on our file transfer because obviously this job is doing something completely different. So we can give it a name. We can call it, for example, DB query. We can set our particular host/host group. So for me, it's going to be my Control-M demo agent. And if you remember, we created connection profiles for our Control-M for Databases plugin, so we can simply select that connection profile here. Now, once you select your database type, you can see all of the different execution types that you can select. So with Postgres, we have the ability to run stored procedures, SQL scripts, and embedded queries. For today's demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and select the embedded query option, and we're going to run a simple query to test. And we can use this little icon to make the input a little bit bigger if we need more room, and select more options. Here you can enable auto commit if needed, and we always append SQL output to the job's output. And now our database job is created. Next, let's build our REST API job. So with our web services job selected, we want to go ahead and rename it so we can call it API call. Select your particular host/host group. And again, the web services job uses the web services plugin, which requires a connection profile. So after you've set your host/host group, in the what section, you can click on the three dots to select the connection profile that you've created. Once you've set your connection profile, you can enter your endpoint URL. Then you can define your method. For me, it's going to be a get. We can put in our URL request path. Body will keep it empty. HTTP headers are not needed in my case, but in your scenario, if it's needed, you can use this plus icon to add. And we have append request and append response both checked. And finally, our OS job here, this allows us to run any operating system level commands on our agent. So we're going to use this particular OS job to just run a simple sleep for 10 seconds command. I'm going to go ahead and rename this job. We'll call it OS. We have our host/host group selected here. I'm going to go ahead and change this to my demo agent. Now, this isn't a particular job type that uses a plugin, so a connection profile is not needed, but we do need to specify the run as user. This is the user that is going to be executing whatever command or script that we are running on this particular agent. So for me, it is going to be administrator. And in the what, you can choose between script, command, and embedded script. So for me, I'm just going to set it to command and do a sleep for 10 seconds. And now we have all four of our Control-M SaaS jobs created. We have our file transfer job, which picks up a test job. We have a database job that runs an embedded query. We have an API call job, and we have a simple OS job running a operating system command. So now we're almost done, but these jobs are still not configured to run in a sequential order. We need to have these set up in a way where they run one after another after a successful completion of the previous job. In order to do that, we can select the job that is supposed to be at the very start of the flow. For me, it'll be this file transfer job. And with this job selected, you'll notice there's a little blue arrow right below it. We can click and hold on this arrow and just drag it to the job that should be next in the sequence. So for me, it's going to be this database job. So we can see the connection is now made. So we have our file transfer job that runs first. After the successful completion of our file transfer job, then our database query job receives the prerequisite it needs in order to kick off. Now let's keep this going. After our database job, we want to trigger our API job. So we'll do the same exact thing. We'll just take the little blue arrow and connect it to the next job in the flow. So now we can see the connection made between the three jobs. The file transfer runs and successfully kicks off the database job. And once the database job ends successfully, then the API call job is triggered. And finally, we can connect this API call job to our OS job here to complete the flow. So now once we have made all of our connections, you can see on this top right hand side, there is a expand, collapse, and a rearrange button. Sometimes when you're making these dependencies, it may become a little bit messy. So you can always click on this rearrange to just reorganize the workspace that you are working inside of. Now that we have our four jobs built, there's one more job type that we can add here, and that is the SLA management job type. The SLA management job type acts as another layer of monitoring for our flows. So let's say we need to monitor the completion of this flow every time that it runs. Instead of monitoring individual job runs and statuses, we can add a SLA job to the end of this flow and monitor this entire flow and all of the jobs inside it as a whole service. To do that, once you add the SLA job into your workspace, you want to go ahead and update the name here. So we'll just call this the VPMA demo end. We can update our host. Service name, this should be relevant to what the flow actually does or what the SLA job is monitoring for. So here I'm just looking for the successful completion of this demo workflow that I've built. So I'm going to go ahead and for the service name, I'll put demo completion. Next, we have the service. We can set it to regardless of runtime or relative to runtime. So with relative to runtime, we can say that it should complete within 10 minutes of the job running. So the service must complete within 10 minutes after its runtime. And now in order for this to work, we need to connect the very last job in our flow to our SLA job. We do another rearrange to reorganize our workspace. And now we are all set. So now we have 5 different jobs in our folder. First one is a file transfer job that is set to run at 10 a.m. every day. Let's turn off the cyclic setting here. Below that, we have our VPMA database query job. This runs after a successful file transfer above it. Once the database job runs and ends successfully, it'll trigger the API call job. API call job successful run will trigger the OS job. And finally, once the OS job runs and ends okay, it'll trigger our SLA ending job, which will mark the service okay. And we're going to see all of this in action in the monitoring domain very soon. Now that our entire workflow is built, we can do a quick validation check to make sure that we are able to check in and save our job definitions into the database without any errors. As we can see, no particular validation errors found. Normally, you get these validation errors if there is a require field that is either filled out incorrectly or is not filled out at all. And it could also error out if you are not following your site standard rules that were defined. So for example, if I remove a part of this job name here, we can see it'll go against the site standards that we have, and it'll automatically populate a warning or an error message. So this will prevent me from checking in and saving my workspace into the Control-M database. I can run validate again. We can see it's still there. I'm going to go ahead and add the name back. Do a validate again. And now we should be able to save and check in our workspace into the Control-M database. Now, there are a few different ways we can monitor our jobs and workflows after we've built them in the planning domain, but let's go over the 3 main ways. To monitor our jobs and workflows, we want to navigate over to the monitoring domain. And the first tab we see here is viewpoints. With viewpoints, we can get a full view into the active environment and see all of the jobs and folders that are loaded into the plan for the day. Here you'll see a bunch of viewpoints that are available by default that come with your Control-M SaaS environment. We have all active jobs, all jobs, grouped by status, grouped by folder, application, and so on. You do have the ability to open all of these viewpoints as is, and we can see that here. Or going back to our viewpoints tab, we also have the capability of opening these viewpoints with additional specific filters. So let's say I only want to see active jobs that belong to my application team, or they are jobs that are a certain job type that I manage. You can do so by just setting a customized filter on whichever viewpoint that you are opening up. Now you also have the history option. You have the ability to go back and look at the active environment with a particular viewpoint for a previous day. So let's say you log in on Monday and you want to see how a particular workflow behave, or what was the output of a particular job on the Saturday before. You can always open up those viewpoints with the history option that is available. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the all active jobs here. This is just going to open a basic all active jobs viewpoint that'll show me all jobs that are active in my Control-M SaaS environment. So we have a similar 3-panel view as to what we saw within the planning domain. On this left-hand side, we have a tree view that lists our jobs and folders. This uses a application sub-application hierarchy format by default. Middle graphical view, and on the right hand side we have our properties panel. So this right hand panel in the monitoring domain just depends on what you have selected. If you select your Control-M server or applications and sub applications within your tree view or your middle graphical view, then you'll get a pie chart with the number of jobs inside that particular instance and their different statuses. So for example, when I click on the VPMA demo application, I can see we have 6 jobs and 2 folders and subfolders loaded in. These jobs are color coded, so we can tell their statuses by the different colors that are set on their little icons. So, for example, our test fail job, it has this red X. Our manual user confirmation job that we learned about in the planning domain, this job requires a manual user confirmation in order for it to trigger, regardless of the scheduling criteria that is set on it. And this particular job, we can see it goes into a pink status when it's waiting for that manual user confirmation. And going back to our pie chart, we can see all of the different statuses that are available to us in Control-M. So we have our waiting for resource, waiting for a host. Waiting for host means there are problems with communications between your Control-M agent and your Control-M SaaS environment. Waiting for resource, we went over this a little bit in the planning domain. This is if we have any particular logical resources set within the prerequisites tab that could be preventing the jobs from running. We have waiting for workload, waiting for event, if the job is waiting for a particular runtime criteria or dependency in order to run, then it'll be in this gray status with this hourglass icon. And finally, we have the executing status. This is the yellow icon that the jobs will go into as they are executing. So a couple of different actions that we can take within the monitoring domain in our viewpoint. When we click on our folders and jobs, this right-hand panel changes from a pie chart and it turns into sort of like a job slash folder summary slash definitions. So with our testing demo folder selected, I can see the folder status. The folders ended not okay. We can see the folder start time, end time. This is all relative to the one job that's inside it. We have the unique folder run ID, the run date. We can go into the folder settings here and see the folder definitions as they were set within the planning domain. We can go through the scheduling criteria here, prerequisites, actions, see if there were any prerequisites set or any outgoing or post processing that's supposed to happen when this job ends okay. We have the logs. The logs are like a lifeline of the job or folder since it came into the active environment. So we can see this particular job was this particular folder, sorry, came into the plan at 133. We can see it was released by my user ID. It went into an execution status. And then at 133, it ended not okay. Almost instantly, it ended not okay and went into this failure status. We also have the statistics of folders and jobs available. Now, these, if it's the first time running, it'll just say 5 minutes. But if it has previous runs accumulated, then it'll just take the average runs from the previous runs that the job has had. We have documentation. Documentations can be set in the planning domain for our jobs and smart folders in our Control-M environment. It can either be file or a URL documentation. And of course, we have the related tab, which is in regards to services that we've created. So going back to our demo folder here, we can see that the particular job inside it is in that pink waiting for manual user confirmation status. You'll notice as I'm navigating these jobs, some of the options in this top hand panel change. So we can see we have the option to put this job on hold. When I put a job on hold in the monitoring domain here, it'll again prevent it from running. It'll not let the job run even if its prerequisites were met. We have this confirm, which will confirm the job. It'll release it from the manual user confirmation that we have set. We have a run now, which bypasses any prerequisites and submission criteria that are set on the job. We have a skip option, which allows us to skip this particular job in the flow. We have an OK if we want to set the job to an OK status. And this, believe it or not, comes up frequently in other organizations. For example, The particular job may run on the back end. Maybe the file transfer was already facilitated, or maybe the batch script already ran. For whatever reason, we just want the job to be in an okay status without another execution to continue the rest of the flow. And in scenarios like that, we can just set the job to an okay status. This will allow the job's post processing to happen, triggering the jobs after as if the initial job ended okay. We have bypass, we have neighborhood. Neighborhood shows us the dependency of the particular jobs. So now let's go ahead and confirm this particular job that is waiting for a manual user confirmation and allow it to run in our monitoring domain. So I'm going to go ahead and confirm. And after confirmation, we should see this first job pick up. So now we can see our file transfer ran and ended okay almost immediately, triggering our database job and then our API call job and then our VPMA OS job. And finally, this job looks like it is sleeping for 10 seconds before triggering our final demo job. So let's go back to this right-hand panel. We have a few additional tabs that we need to review here. So one, we have our summary. The summary just gives us a summary of the job since it came into the active environment. We can see some of the general definitions here as opposed to what the job does. So we can see it's a transfer. We can see the connection profile details. We can see where it runs, the status, the run duration, number of runs if it's a cyclic job, the unique run ID, and in some cases, you may have multiple instances of the same job in your environment, so you may have to differentiate between them using the run ID. You have the run date and some additional information in regards to the job. Now with the job settings, we already went over these. We can see the general job settings that came from the planning domain for this job. We have the scheduling, prerequisite, and actions tab. But since this is a file transfer job, we also have a file transfer tab showing us exactly what this particular job is transferring and from where to where and which file it is picking up and the status of the transfer that happened. We have our logs, which shows us a lifeline of this job since it came into the active environment. So we can see it was confirmed by my user, then it ran, ended okay, and did its post-processing to kick off the jobs after. Next, we have our output. So the output shows the output of the execution or transfer that have happened. So with our file transfer job here, we can clearly see that it started copying the files over, and then eventually the transfer ended okay. And we have a little transfer summary below, which showing us total transfer size and how long it took. We also have the scripts tab here. This will show you the particular scripts that was executed on the, and we also have the scripts tab here. Since this was a file transfer job, so no particular scripts here. So now going to our database job, we can go into the output. We can see that it ran a simple database query and the results are here in the output. We can look into the logs to see exactly at what time and when this job executed. And we can also get those informations from the job summary as well. And we have the same level of detail with all of the different jobs that are available in our active environment. Now, again, there are a few different actions you can take on these jobs. Let's say you want to rerun this failed job here just to try it again. Maybe a fix was implemented that will correct the second rerun of this job. So if that is the case, you can simply rerun the job here and we can try it out. This should just go back into a not okay status since the job is set to just exit with a status code 1. Going into the output, I can see outputs for both executions that happened. It is just giving me an exit 1 now. Now, if I wanted to, I can make modifications to this particular instance of the job fix it and run it again. So in order to do that, first I want to put this job on hold. Then we want to click on edit. And from here, we can make whatever modifications, corrections, or apply whatever fixes that we need to in order to correct the job. So here, I'll update the command to exit 0, save. We can release the hold now. And if we rerun the job should end with an OK status. Now, the next way we can monitor our jobs and workflows in Control-M SaaS is through the services, which leverages the SLA management job that we created and added to our workflow earlier. So here we can see the service level agreement that we set on the workflow that we've created earlier. By simply clicking on it, it'll open up another viewpoint for me showing only the jobs that belong to that particular SLA. So I can go through these jobs individually here, look at their particular outputs. And if there are any failures, I can troubleshoot, manage, and take any necessary actions. With my demo completion service selected on this right-hand side, I can see a summary of my SLA. I can see that it currently ended late. And that's because according to the SLA job that we created, the workflow was supposed to end within 10 minutes of it coming into the active environment. So below we can see the reason, service completed late. We can see the status of all of the different jobs that are within this particular service workflow. So we can see 0 are in execution status, 0 waiting for event. All 6 of those jobs have ended okay. We can see the start and end time. So we can see it started at 4:05 a.m. and the workflow ended at 4:23 a.m. Hence why it was set to a late status, because again, this workflow only had 10 minutes to run. We can go into the errors tab to see if there are any errors. We can go into logs. The logs will show us all of the logs that were generated in the lifetime of this particular service. And we have the parameters tab if any particular parameters were set. And finally, we have a unique dashboard for our managed file transfer jobs only. Right next to our monitoring tab, we can navigate to manage file transfer, and here we can see our MFT dashboard. Now by default, you'll get this dashboard here showing you files by status. We can see how many file transfers failed, how many ended okay. Now this dashboard is exclusive to file transfer jobs only. You will not see other job types within this dashboard. You have an advanced search that'll allow you to search by all sorts of different criterias and filter through your file transfer jobs. You can search by file name, by source, status, if the particular file transfer jobs are in progress, completed, failed, completed with error, in queue, or canceled. With particular destinations, if you're just searching by specific job names, source path, destination path. And of course, we have our normal application, sub-application, folder, run ID parameters that we can also search by. And this middle dashboard is clickable, so you can click on the results and it'll actually open up a separate tab showing you exactly what you clicked on. So for example, if I click on the 2 file transfers that completed okay, we have a separate tab that opens up that shows us exactly which file was transferred, the status of that transfer, the progress in percentages, the transfer total, file size, the source, destination, job name, and as well as a bunch of additional informations. And of course, this particular dashboard, just like the monitoring and planning domain, is also following a tabular style, so you can create multiple tabs for multiple different searches. And you can select any one of these results. On the right hand side, we have the properties panel, which will give you a summary of that particular transfer and job. So we can see the status completed okay, source, destination, and more importantly, we can click on the job name here and the job details. This will open up a viewpoint for us to see the job in the monitoring domain. So you have a bunch of additional informations here available. You can click on the job name to open it in a viewpoint. And you can also look at the particular job's output itself through the managed file transfer dashboard, which is always nice. All right, that should be it for our demo today. We went over Control-M SaaS agent installations, plugin installations, creating our connection profiles, creating our jobs, workflows within the planning domain, and seeing them run in the monitoring domain using viewpoints, services, and the managed file transfer dashboard. I hope you found this demo valuable. I hope you found this demo valuable. If you have any questions, please reach out to me via